Hey guys, it's Heather. I had chapter 6, which is called Daily Instruction for Intermediate ELLs. This chapter overall was kind of interesting. It was actually really all over the place with explaining different things on how to have a daily instruction and kind of a theme for their students. But the examples that they provided were everywhere, so it was hard to kind of follow along. It was really beneficial, and if you ever were looking for writing examples, this is a great chapter in a book to use in your own classroom because you could just copy and paste and scan in the examples that they give you. So we all know that I tend to talk too much, so I'm going to try and get this video done as quick as possible. Okay, bear with me. Okay, so the chapter starts in the intro about a large buck. He goes to a spring and he's thinking about how he looks down at his legs and he's thinking, why are his legs so thin and weak, and he's angry. But then a lion approaches him, ready to hunt him, and the buck immediately turns away and shoots off into the distance. And the strong legs are the ones carrying him across the plains to safety. And so the buck realizes, oh my goodness, it was my legs, not my mighty horns, which saved me from death. So the story focuses on how the buck wasn't able to see his most valuable strength until he was faced with a challenging situation. And they relate this to classroom students, especially at this level, and how they often have a hard time seeing their valuable qualities. So this chapter focuses basically on outlining those students' strengths. So it says in the quote, build on students' strengths and experiences, promote greater learning, and help students see the value both in their learning and in themselves. And that's something that they often don't look at. So the chapter then starts out talking about reflection and homework. So they suggest that students and teachers and classrooms as a whole together actually have a reflective activity a few times a week after learning a new skill or just feeling kind of like they need to discuss the overall ideas of what happened that day, what happened in that new activity, just to kind of get a feel not only on where the students are, but possible questions or just even topic points, not even questions per se. And that's something that we do as teachers in general anyway, but just kind of reiterating that. And then it reminds us of 5 different categories that we can use to reflect. So summarize, self-assess, assess the class and the teacher, relevance of the activity, and higher order thinking. And that was all previously discussed in chapter 4. Then with the homework, they list how it's similar to homework assigned for beginners and early intermediates. You want to focus on the 4 domains we talk about all the time. And one of the things that they point out is that you should be reading a book 20 minutes per day at home at this level, and it's a lot more about writing. So writing in a journal and a reading log about whatever book you're reading, and then sharing what you're writing. So obviously you wouldn't share personal things in your journal, but maybe keeping an academic journal as well, and so then using what you write for your homework and sharing it aloud to a teacher, a peer, coworker, or a family member. So it's a lot about putting your work into action, so writing, talking out loud, more than just the reading and the listening skills now. And they also kind of slid in a little chapter about field trips and the importance of taking this level of students out into the real world, and not only with using their listening and speaking skills, but just putting all of their vocabulary into action and how it's appropriate to do that at this level. So I thought that was pretty cool. So overall, this chapter talks about thematic ways of teaching and how to assess that with your students. So they begin with, you want to build your vocabulary for rich reading and writing experiences, because that's what the main academics that they're learning in this type of level. They're getting a way more advanced reading, and they basically this whole chapter is just about ways to begin the writing experience and how it's not just sentence structure now, it's more for academic writing, using that vocabulary in the right way, making longer sentences that allow you to think more analytic on things. And the main idea here is organizing thematic units around academic writing genres. So I know as an early childhood major, when we have thematic units, like when I did a project on one for undergrad, mine was about recycling. So now it's a little different, and you want to kind of put yourself in the shoes as a high school or a college professor and think of a whole writing genre. So it says in the quote, it quotes in the book, David Wallace Booth and Larry Swartz from their book, Literacy Techniques for Building Successful Readers and Writers. They say it explores a type of writing, understanding the nature of the medium on the message. So it's a little different from just kind of reading for fun. We're getting really in-depth to the writing. And then also when selecting themes and curriculum at this level, one must constantly be asking, okay, is this commonly taught in normal secondary courses? Would this be beneficial in a normal classroom? So you're basically just comparing your ELL students with a normal high school or a normal level class, but modifying all of that. So you need to kind of think, okay, is this actually important? Like, would this actually happen in a normal English, like ELA classroom in high school? Then they move on to when you are trying to select that writing genre theme. These are all the little key topics that you need to put into place. So find the meaning and purpose. You want to try and connect the topics of study to students' lives and offer students choice in their topic study. You want to build on their prior knowledge, make a connection to students' life experiences, like you always would, but especially now, since it's going to be a hard learning procedure with all the new and the thinking skills that you're actually putting into the process. Integrated opportunities to use oral and written language for learning purposes. So you want to promote the variety of oral language and literacy experiences that are aligned with student interests. Scaffolding for support. You want to use multiple scaffolds to support students who are at various levels of language proficiency. That's always important, but I think it's even more important now because they're going to feel a lot of anxiety, I think, when they're going into this process of writing academically. So having the skills that they already are so good at using, able to help them within this process is kind of like a relaxing source to have. Collaboration, providing opportunities for students to work together in pairs and small groups for learning tasks. It's a whole lot less intimidating when you're in a group and you can kind of put all your brain power together. And then variety, creating a dynamic learning environment that emphasizes variety and flexibility in all aspects of the classroom. So you want to think about all those components whenever you're selecting your own unit. And the sample unit they use within this chapter is problem and solution genre writing. So they begin with listing a ton of examples like I previously mentioned, and some of those were quick write, and that just starts with problems all around. So just discussing problems in general, and they kind of just ease their way into actually having to write, which I love. Then they would just discuss different writing prompts. So they would have to read it, and instead of actually acting on it, they're just discussing it individually, in small groups, or as a whole classroom activity. Then they do word charts, and it's not just about problem and solution. They then move on to autobiographical incident and response literature. So they're not only talking about the genre, but also just writing vocabulary in general. And in those word charts, they have the word, the meaning, the related words, and the pictures. So all those different aspects kind of helping them learn those new vocabulary. A close, which looks like a Mad Lib page, fill in the blanks, relating to real-life problem solutions, and also the literature itself. Lists, they use childhood obesity as an example, and they list all different facts about childhood obesity, and then they have to, they use and it's a numbered list, and then in the next page, they show which facts on that list could be a hook, a thesis, a cause, an effect, or a solution, but they use it with the correlating number of the fact on the list, so they're able to directly see and pick and choose which items from that list would go in different spots when they begin writing a paper. So it's nice to see that visually. And then it thoroughly explains it with each number when they're explaining the hooks, the thesis. They practice interviewing each other about real life causes and effects, what the problem would be, possible solutions to the problem, just kind of practicing the whole idea of problems and solutions with their own real life examples. And then when they move on to actually receiving their own prompt, they have an outline, so just like you would use in any other classroom, and a peer checklist, which is really helpful. I know I always like those. Okay, so moving on to assessment. Once you use all of those given tools and examples throughout the chapter, then you have to grade your student, which they say that it's not like normal grading. So I know I've kind of focused on comparing yourself to normal ELA teachers in the assessment process. You're not. So you're assessing them on the student's understanding of the prompt analysis. And then they talk a lot about Bloom's taxonomy and how you're kind of rating like their higher thinking, kind of showing, okay, did they go in with that? Are they trying to think outside of the box? The purpose is to teach the students tools that they can use in on-demand writing situations, because that is what is upcoming in their life as an English speaker. They want to use this type of activity and unit to expose students' analytical thinking involved in academic writing, like I mentioned before. So a detailed rubric is not necessary, and observation and quick review of the student writing is fine. And then if you don't feel like your student is ready to write completely, you can do pre-composing activities and use their graphic organizers to kind of assess them. Like we say often, we're never trying to push our students, so whichever they're comfortable with, that's what you'll use to grade. Then additional activities, you could use an ABC, a gallery walk, or a quick write as ways to assess them, and sequencing activities, and also sentence modeling. Okay, and so to culminate what you learned in this PowerPoint, as a class, I want you to think of your own thematic unit, writing unit, so similar to the problem and solution that we use as an example in this chapter. Think of your own, and that you would consider using in your classroom with intermediate level students. And then I want you to list 2 ways or examples to engage your students to relate to that unit and how you would modify it to work for your students specifically. Okay, thank you.